About Mauryan administration, which is our next topic. About Mauryan administration, it was a highly centralized kind of administration. It was a centralized administration. It was a highly centralized state. Remember this thing, Mauryan state was a highly centralized state, unlike the Gupta Empire, which was a highly decentralized state. So this is the difference between these two kinds of empires which had been there in ancient India. So this Mauryan administration, it was a centralized administration. Its foundations were led by its first ruler, the first great ruler, who was not only a great conqueror, but he was also a great administrator. He led the foundations of the Mauryan administration. It was Chandragupta Maurya. He led the foundations of the Mauryan administration, and that system was continued by his successors like Bindusara and Ashoka. No doubt Ashoka elaborated it and he liberalized it further. His emphasis upon more, this welfare for the people. So this administrative setup which was founded by Chandragupta Maurya, it was continued by his successors. So this administration of this Mauryan Empire, it was also inspired by the ideas of Chanakya or the Kautilya, which was there, which was a prime minister under Chandragupta Maurya, as I told you that. And the apex, at the top of this administrative setup, it was king. It was king or the emperor. It was king or the emperor. King was the supreme head of the state. He was the supreme head of the state. He exercised all the legislative, executive, and judicial functions. He was the busy person of his empire, and he was hardly able to do anything other than to exercise his powers as a king efficiently. He was the most busy person, as we have been told by this Kotal and the Megasthenes. This is actually the administration, the details about the administration of Mauryan Empire. The details of this administrative setup has been given by Megasthenes and Kautilya. They have given the detailed account of the administrative setup of the Mauryan Empire. They say that the emperor was the most busy person of his, in his empire. He was protected. He lived in a luxurious palace at Pataliputra, and he was protected by the bodyguards, which also included the female bodyguards. The spies, they held an important place in the administrative setup of the Mauryan Empire. So it was king who was the absolute. He was practically not checked by anything, anyone. Although he consulted his ministers, which assisted him in the administration, in the day-to-day administrative activities. So this king was assisted by the Council of Ministers. This Council of Ministers was a small body comprised of 15 to 20 ministers, and they used to hold a charge of a separate department. Like the present day cabinet, which we see, the ministers therein, they are holding a specific charge over a particular area. Like we have the minister who looks after the agriculture and all that. So similar kind of things happened during this Mauryan Empire. So this was the Council of Ministers which assisted king in exercising this day-to-day activities. However, it was bureaucracy actually. It was a highly centralized and efficient bureaucracy which was there, which actually implemented the various policies which the state used to make. So this highly centralized bureaucracy was there, which was the chief feature of this Mauryan administrative setup. There were some important officials which carried on the administration of this Mauryan Empire. Among the various important officials, we had the first important official. He was known as this Sanidatta. Sanidatta. Sanidatta, he was heading treasury. Sanidatta, he was heading a treasury. Then we had another important official. He was known as Samharta. Samharta, he was this collector of taxes. Samharta was collector of taxes. Okay. Then there was another important official. It was this Pratyahara. Pratyahara or Mahapratyahara. Pratyahara was the royal guardian of royal gateways. Pratyahara was the guardian of royal gateways. Okay. So this was Pratyahara. He was the guardian of royal gateways. Then we had another important official, Senapati. Senapati was held, Senapati was in charge of army. Then we have, this Purohita. Purohita was the chief priest who held an immense influence over the policy decisions of the state. Purohita was the chief priest. Then we had another official, Nyadish. Nyadish was, holding in the charge of the judicial system. Judicial administration. So these important officials were there which you need to remember for the examination point of view. And these officials, they exercised it, they implemented, they executed the policies of the state. There were various other officials which are, so very much, which run in hand runs. But these are the important officials which which you need to remember for the examination point of view. Now, after this bureaucracy, another important feature of the Mauryan administration was the provincial administration. Now let's have a look over towards the provincial administration of the Mauryan Empire. So during the Chandragupta Maurya, the first emperor, the first king of the Mauryan dynasty, we don't have a clear picture as far as the number of provinces is concerned. But during the time of Ashoka, there were certainly 4 provinces. There were certainly 4 provinces during the times of Ashoka. And these 4 provinces were, one province was known as Uttarapatha. Uttarapatha, its capital was at Taxila. Second province was known as, this Dakshinapatha. Dakshinapatha. Its capital was at Suvarnagiri. Then we had another important province that is known as Avantiratha. Its capital was at Ujjain. And the 4th province, it was Kalinga. Its capital was at Tosali, or we can call it Doli as well. There is a rock cut, this animal as well in Doli. So these were the 4 provinces of the Mauryan Empire, and these 4 provinces were looked after by the different governors who were usually the princes, of the royal blood. For example, when Ashoka was a prince, when he was living under the protection of his father, he used to be the governor of Taxila. Okay, he used to be the governor of Taxila. He was sent there when a revolt occurred in Taxila. He went there to suppress that revolt, and he successfully did that. And there was a royal capital city of Patliputra. Patliputra capital city. It was directly under the charge of the king and his council. He directly looked after the areas, the areas around the Magad, which included Patliputra as well. So this was the provincial administrative setup of the Mauryan Empire. These provinces were further divided into districts. These provinces were divided into districts, and districts were headed by Rajukas. Rajukas were further divided into number of villages, another unit which was headed by Gopes. Then the smallest unit was village. At village level, it was the assembly, it was a village committee, it was a village assembly which looked after the administration of that, of that unit. So it was the important, it was the setup which prevailed, administrative setup which prevailed over the provinces during the Mauryan Empire. Now carrying on about this Mauryan administration, there is one important thing, there is one other important aspect of this administration. About this Mauryan administration, we also have to, this look. We also have to look into their city administration as well. This city administration, when about the city administration, this we have been given an important and interesting account by Megasthenes. Megasthenes has given an important information about the city administration, about the administration of the city of Patliputra. He has given the details that this city was administered by the council of 30 members, and those 30 members were divided into 6 committees, 6 boards, and each board looked after over the separate subject, or the separate matter. For example, 6 boards, one board, it looked after the industrial arts. It looked after the industrial arts. For example, it looked after whether the artisans are being given the fair wages or not, whether these artisans are being protected or not. The artisans, the Mauryan Empire, it stressed upon the protection for the artisans. The profession of artisans was considered as a sacrosanct profession, and every care was taken to protect those class of people from the exploitation or from any harm. Okay, so for example, if there was an artisan who was living in the Mauryan Empire, if somebody harms in that, he could not make that kind of craft again. If he was harmed by any person, so that person was given the capital punishment. He was given the punishment of death. So such kind of importance was given to this profession. So one board looked after the industrial arts. Now the second board, it looked after the welfare. It looked after the welfare of foreigners who visited the city. Foreigners, whether the foreigners are being given the protection and the care by the city people, whether the foreigners are safe there or not, that was a job of the second board. Now the third board, it looked after the registration of births and deaths. Third board, okay, it looked after the registration of births and deaths. And then the fourth board, it looked after the taxation. Whether the goods which are being sold in the market, they are being taxed or not. It was the job of this fourth board. Then the fifth board, it looked after looked after the trade and commerce. Whether it is being carried on as per the policy provisions, as per the state policies or not. कोई वायलेशन तो नहीं हो रही है, कोई वहाँ पे जो है कोई उनको प्रोटेक्शन वगैरह ट्रेडर्स को मिलते हैं कि नहीं है. तो that was the job of this fifth board, which looked after the trade and commerce. Okay, then there is another important board for this, that pertain to the manufactured articles. That looked after the manufactured articles. So it was the job of the sixth board during the Mauryan Empire. So it was a kind of city administration which prevailed over the Mauryan Empire, which you have to remember. Now, another important component, you remember one thing, that Mauryan Empire, Mauryan state was a highly centralized state. It had a monopoly over all the important activities, all the important economic activities of during those times. For example, mining can be done only by the state. It was only the state who could possess the army. So this was something which was novel as far as the administration of this this Mauryan Empire is concerned. Now there is one important other aspect, that is the army administration. How the administration of army was carried out. We are being told by the Greek historian Pliny that Chandragupta Maurya, the first king, we are being told by the this Pliny that Chandragupta Maurya had 6 lakhs of infantry. Okay, 30,000 cavalry. He further says that he had chariots, he has infantry. He has given a detailed account of this army which was under the possession of Chandragupta Maurya. And how this administration was carried out, I will give you a little bit of this highlight about this army administration. Like city administration, which we dealt with, this army administration of this Mauryas, it was carried by the board. It was carried by the council of 30 members as well. It was carried army administration. It was carried by the council of 30 members. And these council of 30 members, these 30 members were divided into six committees. And six committees comprising of 5 members each. That means there were 5 members each. That means there were 6 committees. So one committee looked after the infantry, foot soldiers. One committee looked after infantry, another looked after cavalry, third one looked after chariots. Fourth one looked after this navy or admiralty. So then we have 1, 2, 3, 4. Then we have fifth one. It looked after the transportation. Okay, transportation of war, जो भी supplies वगैरह, facility वगैरह जो थी. So it looked after that. Then again we had the infantry. It was looked after by the sixth committee. So this was the army administration, which was carried on a very efficient and sound lines by the Mauryan rulers, by the Mauryan kings. Remember this thing, this administration and the important officials which you have written down there in your notebooks. You remember some important, like what was the function of Pratyahara, what is the function of Senapati, and what was the function of Nyadisha. And remember this thing, this was the administrative setup which was influenced by the ideas of this Kautilya, by Chanakya, and these foundations were led by Chandragupta Maurya himself. And they were, that administrative setup was followed by his successors like Bindusara and Ashoka. But Ashoka liberalized it further. He emphasized it. He focused upon Ashoka. About Ashoka, he made it more welfare oriented. About Ashoka, he made it more welfare state than the others. In his inscriptions, he called himself as that is a terminology, a typical terminology during those times, Seva Munsa Praja Mama. That means all men are my children. All men are my children. Ashoka used to say that all men are my children, and as I would wish that my children should get all the happiness in this world, so I desire for all the other subjects who live under my protection. So he liberalized it further. He elaborated the functions of the officials further. For example, Rajukas were given the judicial powers, and all the officers like Rajukas and the others, they were constantly pushed to emphasize upon the tours. They were given, they were told to make tours as an integral part of the administration. Furthermore, he appointed the class of officers called, this Dhamma Mahamadras, who were given the duty to propagate Dhamma, who were given, the duties to propagate Dhamma among the people, so that this moral and spiritual upliftment of the people is ensured. So Ashoka made it more welfare oriented. So this was the brief outline of the administrative setup of this Mauryan Empire. So which I hope you will, remember for the examination point of view.